So today on the Superset series, we have Coach Jim Kiritsy. He is the Director of Strength and Conditioning for football at Kennesaw State University. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Before we start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where you're from, what you've done in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here. Happy you brought me on the show. I'm originally from a small town called Northbridge, Massachusetts. Small town right in the middle near Worcester, Mass. Um, I went to college at Norwich University, which is a small Division III military school in Vermont, where I played football and baseball. Football for 4 years, baseball for 3. I was a phys ed major. I was in the Corps Cadets. Towards the end of my time at Norwich, I knew I wanted to coach since I was 11 years old, but I didn't know if I wanted to be a football coach, if I wanted to be a strength coach. But I had an opportunity to do some student teaching. And after about 2 days of student teaching in high school, I realized that absolutely not for me. I need to get into the college ranks. And I was lucky enough that my first strength coach, Justin Goulet, he had kind of climbed the ranks while I was still in school. And he offered me an entry level position at the University of Vermont. So after I graduated in 2009, I worked there for 2 years under him. Had a lot of responsibility. Men's and women's hockey, men's basketball, soccer, both men's and women's lacrosse. Assisted with skiing and swimming and diving, track and field, and soccer's, and it was a very diverse experience. While still personal training to try to make ends meet. So I was training athletes at one time, training little kids and old women. So I had a really diverse assortment of clientele that I was working with my first couple of years out. After 2 years there, I left and I became a graduate assistant at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina for Coach Boucher. I was a GA for about 2 months, and luckily, based on the way some of his staff got jobs, I got promoted to associate director within 2 months, and I served at that role under Coach Boucher for 3 years. I trained primarily men's basketball, wrestling, and I was a top assistant to football year round while taking grad school courses. And in March here, I started as the director of football at Kennesaw State, which is a brand new football program here. We're going to compete in the Big South starting in 2015.
I know, like you said, you're currently building a brand new strength program, from the ground up. So what are some challenges that you faced? What is some advice that you give to coaches going through those same scenarios?
I'm fortunate to be able to be in the situation, and I thought that I had a pretty good plan going into how I was going to handle a brand new from the start program. Having 100 kids, 90% of them being true freshmen, a couple of upperclassmen walk-ons. But there are always some obstacles that you can't really anticipate. And the first thing is that you've got no leaders on the team. And that's not their fault, because they were leaders in high school, but you're a leader based on your experiences, that have led you to being an upperclassman and knowing the way things are going. But when you come in here and it's brand new to everybody, you're trying to take care of yourself and figure out for yourself before you can take anybody along with you. So we're in the weight room those first couple of times. We're on the field those first days of preseason, and we realize that the only people on the field that can get through the kids are the coaches. And that's a great responsibility, and one that we needed to really attack and embrace in order to get things done. If we wanted to lay the foundation the way we said that we wanted to. So we realized pretty quickly that, hey, we needed to step up our game. We needed to explain things clearly. We needed to set very clear, precise expectations. And then we needed to be rock solid with our discipline regarding those. Are you meeting or are you not meeting those expectations? So that was probably the biggest challenge that we faced, was not really having the help of upperclassmen to carry those young kids around. Something that we are still dealing with, because we're still only a few months into this program. But now that our kids kind of understand what our culture is, what our standards are, what our expectations are, now it's starting to take care of itself, and you're starting to hear kids hold each other accountable to the things that we've preached from day one. But it took a little bit of time to get the kids to not just buy in. It's not so much buy in, it's understand what we're trying to do. So, if I was talking to a coach who is about to take over a program, I'd say over plan and over communicate.
Okay.
Period. over communicate the simplest of details so they can just go out and just do it. And don't get too cute. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But if you over plan and over communicate, you have a pretty good chance of being successful, I think.
So what are some of the first things that you did trying to build your program?
Well, again, I was lucky. The first 2 weeks that we were here practicing, we just ran. All we did was run. We didn't lift. We didn't snap a football. We didn't throw a football. We went out there and we ran. We kind of wanted to see if we needed to weed anybody out. We wanted to get some kids in shape. We had no clue what they had done all summer because we weren't training them all summer. So by the time we got to the weight room, we kind of knew that thing about not having leaders, right? So I was able to, in our first team meeting to discuss how we do things in the weight room, I was able to over plan and over communicate. And I think I did a great job, as well as my staff, of clearly outlining our expectations. We clearly established what our rules were of the weight room, very, very clearly, and that we made sure that whenever one of those rules was broken, it was punished on the spot, and then it was communicated to the entire team as to why we're doing what we're doing, why it's important that we all buy in, and it's important that they all see that that kid has some type of a consequence for not following the plan. So some of the first things we did were really, really clearly communicate what we were trying to do. And then when it came to the X's and O's of training, we were very organized and we did straight basics. It was all the basics. And Brett Bartholomew, who works out in Arizona with Exos, formerly API, he has this great line that I'm sure he stole from somebody. It says, simple things done savagely well. Simple things done savagely well. And so I wasn't coming in here doing complex training. I wasn't coming in here doing cluster sets. We didn't have chains and bands on. We weren't doing elaborate single leg balance techniques. We came in here and we learned how to move. We learned how to operate at a fast tempo. And we learned how to do the basic things the right way. And then little by little, we've pushed the envelope with those. Now, we're only a couple of months in. We're still doing the basics. If you were to come in and watch us lift, you wouldn't see anything you've never done before. But you'd see a room full of kids getting coached hard, doing simple things and being held accountable to the smallest of details. Now we're just doing it heavier. Now we're just challenging them with different rep schemes as opposed to accommodating resistance or different types of stuff that you read about in all the fancy blogs and Russian textbooks.
You guys set a great foundation. You guys made sure that they knew what they were supposed to do, what their, what the rules were, what the guidelines were. And what do you do to continue to get better as a coach and a strength program?
What helps me personally, I get better every time I hold some type of a workshop with my staff. I have a staff of 1 full-time graduate assistant and 5 student interns. And I understand that, especially the interns, they've never been in this environment before. They've never really coached before. But the way I run my program, I need coaches coaching. I can't afford to take my 5 interns and put them on the wall and say, watch for a month. Well, I run around like a madman trying to coach 50 kids at a time, right?
Right.
So every time we would do some type of coaching school where we're going over a technique or a periodization concept or a programming concept or different skills and drills or leadership, that makes me better. It forces me to dive back into the material that I had originally learned. And, teaching is learning twice. Teaching it to them makes me see it clearer, helps me do a better job on the floor with my kids, but it also gets my staff ready to go out and do a great job with our kids. So I have 7 people on the floor, and regardless of their level of their years of experience, they're very competent and capable doing what we're set out to do. So every time we sit down and we go over something that makes me better, that makes us better as a staff. And I've watched my staff grow and develop. And as they've gotten better, our kids have gotten better. So I try to invest at least 3 hours a week into staff development, if not 5. Once a day, maybe 3 times a week. And we do our very best to educate them and then empower them to go out and do a great job make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, so they can come back and do a better job. So we grow as a program as we grow as a staff, and it's seen from the results that we're seeing in the weight room.
So 3 to 5. I wrote it down. Just make sure 3 to 5 hours a week in staff development.
Yes, and that goes from watching TED Talks and then talking about them, or assigning them readings from anything that I found on the internet, anything that I found in books. It could be, again, we talked about all the different types of periodization, constant, linear, conjugate, undulating, different type, the tier system. We talked about, triphasic training. We've talked about powerlifting, West Side method. We've talked about this, that, the other thing. So they have a kind of a good grasp of a lot of different things out there. Then we'll go over, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which is a business leadership book by Patrick Lencioni. The Fred Factor, things from Coach Krzyzewski, things from the military, different things that you've watched, teachers giving lectures on about how to teach better, how to communicate better, body language. If we can find anything that's going to help us communicate our mission to our kids better, we spend time on it as a staff the best we can. And to be perfectly honest, the first month and a half, 2 months, we were rock solid. And then as we kind of got moving, it would be more towards 2 or 3 hours a week as opposed to 3 or 5. But throughout the course of the semester, it's constant development. And I don't look at it as just me developing the staff. That's helping me continuously improve my ability to communicate that information to a group of people. That's how we continue to grow, and our kids have gotten better because of it.
I've seen pictures on your guys' Facebook page and all that, but you guys have group meetings. I mean, you can going over stuff. I mean, is that where you guys are bouncing ideas off of each other, or talking about the topic, or what's going on in that situation?
It really depends. We meet before and after every single lift. So if our first group starts at 7:15, we'll meet. Like our typical schedule would be we'd meet at 5:30 in the morning, and we would go over the plan of the day, the objective of the day, ask them if they have any questions about what we're doing, right? And then we'd set up the room, then we'd do our attendance and our cell phone check, and then we'd get rolling. Then after the lift, as soon as the lift is done and all the kids are gone, then we come into the room and we go over what we saw. I can't see everything. We train the team in 2 big groups. That's 2 groups of 50 kids. I can't see everything. I want to know what these 3 platforms look like because they're in the corner of the room that I'm not around at. I only worked with the injured kids for 10 minutes today. What about my intern who worked? How'd they work? What was their attitude like? Are they getting stronger? Are they holding each other accountable? So that's the second meeting that we'll hold. And then typically after that, we'll break, we'll clean the weight room. Maybe we'll lift, whatever it is, and then we'll come back and we'll do our staff development, which we'll watch the video, or I'll have had them do a reading that they need to come and present their outline to, and then we'll start asking questions about that. And I'll ask them questions, and they'll ask me questions. And I try to empower them and eliminate any fear of asking questions, because I think it's good that they get we eliminate ambiguity from our program. I want them to understand all the information that we're putting out there so they can go forth and coach it now and in the future. But yeah, a lot of the times you see those pictures, it's me presenting a topic to the group, them having a day or so to research it or read it, and then coming and presenting their ideas, asking their questions, asking each other questions. The best ones are when I start the conversation and I don't talk for another 10, 15, 20 minutes because they're running it themselves.
Right.
That's when things are great. So that's typically when you see those pictures, that's what you are seeing.
And we've touched on this subject numerous times throughout the conversation, but to you, what does being a head strength coach mean? And I'm not talking about, okay, well, I'm the head guy, I'm in charge, we're going to do things this way. I mean, what does being a head strength coach mean to you, as a profession, as an individual? What does that mean?
Well, Coach Connors at East Carolina put it beautifully. He said, coaching is a calling. Right? I think he's going to present about it in January at the NSCA clinic. I feel called to coach. I'm the son of a coach. I've been around coaching. That's all I've ever wanted to do. And then, I found a passion and a need for strength and conditioning in my life, and I feel it's important that I pass that down. And what's great is that working with one team gives me the ability to be there for everything and be a true part of our football staff. And I'm really lucky to work for a head football coach who values what I bring, not just me, but the industry, what strength and conditioning offers, because it's so much more than just picking things up and putting things down.
Right.
There are habits formed in the weight room that are so important to the field, that are so important to how you act for the rest of your life, right? And so I understand why we're trying to develop young leaders. We're trying to develop young men into functional members of society who can go back and contribute based on the training that they received in here, to learn to never accept defeat, work as hard as they can towards a goal, be patient, especially in this age, right? In this age, everything is now. Gimme. The digital age gives us instant results, instant feedback. Well, the weight room doesn't give you instant feedback. Nothing in here comes after one session. You'll work for months for a 5-10 pound PR. And I want them to find value in that work and find value in the consistency of that, because that's going to serve them well on the field and then in the office or, in the meeting room for the rest of their life. And so that starts a lot. Pat Ivey at Missouri talks about social responsibility. Pull your pants up to your waist, take earrings out. Everybody dresses the same. Use the right language in the weight room. Hold each other accountable the right way. Be a great teammate. Those are things that I think are the most important things that you can cultivate in a weight room. So that's what being a strength coach means. And when you can work for a coach that values those things as well, and that's why he coaches too, then you're empowered to do some pretty cool things. But you can't just say, okay, I'm here to teach and mentor, and then not know the X's and O's of your job, right? So you continue to dive into the books and learn this and learn that and try this and try it on yourself, try it on your staff, try it on the kids, build trust and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. That's what being a coach means. It's so multi-pronged, it's multifaceted, but it's the best job in the world. I'm passionate about it. I love it. And I hate to see it done poorly. So I come to work every day trying to set at least as much of a standard as I can for what I think we should be doing in this industry.
You've been an assistant, you've been an intern, you've been GA. What are the changes going from an assistant to a head strength and conditioning coach? What does the impact that you have on your athletes, does that change, in that instance, or, just kind of touch on that?
You like to think no, because I like to think that as an assistant, you're forming relationships with your athletes just as much as the head coach is. The thing about being a head coach is that you are the umbrella, right? Everybody knows who you are. You're the person that people are going to look to as the figurehead, right? I am in front of the team more than my assistants. So do I have more of an impact on them? Maybe. But I try to tell my staff that I shouldn't be the only person that knows what's going on in these kids' lives. I want my assistants, and I know that Coach Boucher wanted me as his assistant to do the same thing. Form a relationship and build trust. So the kids on platform 1 that you run, those are your guys, right? They go to you when they have a question. They don't have to go to the head coach. They go to you because you've built that trust. You've established that trust. Now, the responsibilities of being a head coach are bigger, right? I'm managing a budget. I'm hiring a staff. I'm evaluating a staff. I sit in the staff meetings with the football team. I'm asked my opinion on the pulse of the team by the coaches. There are certain responsibilities. If you don't make the decision, no decision is made. Right. And that's the thing that when you assume the responsibility of a head coach, that's what changes. If you forget to write the program, there's no program written. If you don't tell your staff to clean the weight room, then it doesn't get done. You have a set of responsibilities. You have the responsibility to get the program running and keep the program running. But when it comes to the individual relationship with athletes, I like to think that my assistants will do a great job of building trust, and our guys will look up to them just as much as they'll look up to me. I'll just be here longer because they're interns, they're semesterly or yearly. Right. But to kind of sum it up, and I'm kind of long-winded, and anybody who knows me will tell you that ahead of time. but the overall responsibility is bigger in terms of running the program, the department, making some decisions, hiring. But when it comes to dealing with the kids, I like to think that my staff will do just what I'm doing and continue to grow and foster relationships and trust.
If you could give one word of advice, not just one word, many words, but if you give some advice, to young strength coaches, just strength coaches in period, what's some advice? If you give one big chunk of advice to those individuals, what would it be?
Be on time. Be on time. No head coach can tolerate lack of punctuality. Because like I've talked about, we plan a lot here. We meet before lifts, we meet after lifts. If you're late for that meeting, then our entire session is thrown off because you're not here, and now we have to make a plan with you not being, and then you show up, be on time, be early, right? And then don't be afraid to work and be vulnerable. Ask questions, put yourself out there, be obsessively curious. All the things that you read about on blogs, they'll list the 11 things that successful people do, or the 17 piece of advice that we wish we knew when we were 22. Be on time, outwork everybody, ask questions, be vulnerable, all that stuff. It's cliche, but it's serious. If you don't take yourself seriously, nobody's going to take you seriously, especially when you show up to work in gym shorts and a t-shirt, right? You don't warrant any legitimacy until you earn it yourself. You get that by being on time, being the example, and outworking people. So don't be afraid of hard work, because if you don't outwork people, you're not going to get a job in this industry, period. And then be obsessively curious. Ask people questions, read books, read about what other coaches have done, read Russian conjugate periodization, read business administration, read social psychology. Read about technology. Coach Boucher will tell you, read about technology. Get great at Microsoft Excel. Learn some video editing. Be curious and try to be as multifaceted as possible.
Thank you, Coach, for coming on the show today. I really, really appreciate it. I know that there's plenty of people out there that are going to watch this video that are really going to appreciate it. You've said some great things.
It's my pleasure. I love doing stuff like this, and I've watched a ton of Iron Game Chalk Talks from Ron McKeefery and some from yours as well. So anytime I can give back so people who are in my seat or in previous seats I've sat in can learn, give back any way I can.